everyone, my name's Miranda, and I think we all know what day it is by now. We should all know that it's time for another Top 5 Wednesday. Today's topic is Top 5 Required Reading Books. Basically, required reading is just books that you had to read in school. They were assigned to you and you had to read them or else I'd get detention. Next up, I have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I was lucky enough that this was my summer reading book one year, and I had already read it, but the first time I read it, I didn't really like Hunger Games. Like, I couldn't get into the story, and I just didn't really like dystopian because this was my first dystopian book, and I really just didn't like the concept of it, like taking place in the future and everything's bleak and crappy and hopeless, and it was just really depressing. But when we got to read it first summer reading it again, I found myself really enjoying it this time, and the cool thing was that pretty much everyone else in school, unless you were a bad kid and were too cool for summer reading, had to read this book, so I could fangirl about it with my friends and everything. And what was really awesome about it was that the summer we read it, the next year, like March of next year, was when the first movie was coming out, so we all kind of got to read it before the movie was coming out, and we were all excited to see the movie and everything, and it was a really fun experience, just like all reading this one book before the movie came out, and then everyone knowing what it was about and what this big blockbuster next big movie was going to be. So I really enjoyed reading it. Like I said, the second go around that I had to read it for school was when I really fell in love with the series, except for the last book, because I will always choose to burn that last book if given the choice. Fourth, I have The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, and this is a book I feel like I went through high school somehow not having to read it. Every single person online I feel like has read it in high school, but I hadn't heard like anything about it. I had it confused with some other book because I thought it was about like aliens and space and stuff, so then when I got to read it in my young adult literature class, I was so confused because it's really a realistic contemporary work about these two groups in a town, the Socs and the Greasers. And the Greasers are kind of like the lower class, like living on the poverty, kind of into the gang stuff. The Socs, or the Socs as I like to call them, are the upper class, kind of, they pick on the Greasers and stuff like that. And it's about the battle between them and everything that happens. It's a really, really good book in what it teaches you about life, kind of how the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And even when you think someone's better off than you, always have something that they're going to want. Like, no person is perfect. It's really cool how it gives you like different perspectives about how some people, their life is just, it starts out crappy and they're really given no choice to get themselves out of it, and other people, it starts out crappy but they get the choices to change themselves, and whether you take that choice or not. So I really love the whole message of the story, and I'm really glad I got to read it because it is now one of my favorite books ever. So I definitely recommend that also if you haven't read it. And just FYI, so you don't make the mistake I did, it's not about space aliens and it doesn't have a movie starring Zooey Deschanel. Next up, I have A Doll's House by Harry Isbin, which I'm probably not pronouncing that name right, but I'm sorry, sir. This was a book I had to read senior year for my AP literature class, and the cool thing about that class was that it was up to the teachers to pick the books that we had to read. So like, my friend had a different teacher and she was reading like Hamlet and Crime and Punishment, and all these books that were like very classics that people have read and heard of. But what my teacher did was she kind of made us read more obscure books. Like, yes, they're still famous and still classics, but they're not ones that every single person reads, and A Doll's House was one of them. And I just really love the story because it's about this housewife whose life is basically a doll's house because she's supposed to be like this perfect housewife, doing everything her husband says, being sweet to her children, like just the ideal picture of what a woman is supposed to be in that time. And throughout the story you see her kind of grow into her own person, but I just really liked the message of the story, especially for the time it was written. It was really empowering for women, and also reading it, I could definitely picture Audrey Hepburn in that role. Reading it while picturing Audrey saying the lines was just such a cool experience, and I definitely enjoyed reading some more obscure kind of literature that not everyone has heard of, and I definitely enjoyed it. So if you kind of like more classic-y stuff and kind of like female empowerment stuff like that, I would definitely recommend A Doll's House. It's a really good book. Alright, my second to last favorite required reading book is actually one that I read before it was required, but then it was required, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I almost said Collins, but her last name isn't Collins. And I think we all pretty much know what this book's about, and it's so great. I remember reading it. It was hard for me to get into at first because it was like the first really classic book I had attempted to take on, and I wasn't reading it in class. I was reading it by my own, so I kind of had to figure out the themes and everything for myself. So it was definitely a tough read, but I'm so glad I read it because I absolutely love this book. I love Scout, I love Atticus, I love all the characters, and I'm so irritated with the new book that came out, Go Set a Watchman or whatever it's called, because it just, I feel like, is changing the whole like focus, the whole impact it has on society and on culture as a large, because now when people talk about To Kill a Mockingbird, you're not going to be able to talk about it without mentioning what happens in Go Set a Watchman, and unfortunately it was very depressing to hear what happened in Go Set a Watchman. But To Kill a Mockingbird will always be one of my favorite books, and I think it perfectly captures that mix of like childhood innocence and how sometimes children are the best people because they don't judge as harshly as adults do. Alright, and then my number one favorite required reading book is a book that I actually read in one day because it's short and because I was so flippin' excited to read it when we read it, and that is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I absolutely love this book. Do you know how much I love this book? It has so many great, amazing quotes that I love that it is actually one of the only books I have ever gone and highlighted quotes that I love. So See, I've got some quotes that I love, and this quote is, "They were careless people, Tom and Daisy. They smashed up things and creatures and then retreated back into their money or their vast carelessness or whatever it was that kept them together and let other people clean up the mess they had made." So I have just quotes that I really love highlighted in this book because I think this is such a moving book, and it's just like, it was perfect to read. I was like reading it in English when I was taking U.S. history, so we learn about the American dream, and then this book is all about the American dream and the downfall of the American dream. But I love all the characters. I love Daisy and Tom, even though I hate them. I just love what they represent, how they're those people that they just do what they want and they hurt people and they hurt things, but then they don't care because it never affects them. And I love Nick and I love Gatsby, and I love all the characters and the message of the story, and it will forever be one of my favorite books. I love it so much. You might have seen that shirt I have that has the cover of Great Gatsby out. That's one of my favorite shirts, and that's the one I honestly get complimented the most on. Like, when I wear, I get at least one person who's like, "That's an awesome shirt," and I'm like, "Thank you very much." So I love this book so much, and I definitely recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, do it now, please. So there you have it. Those are the required reading books that I loved the most. I'm lucky in that a lot of the books I read for required reading were actually really good. My teachers knew how to pick really good books, so there's not too many that I was like, "Oh, what is happening here?" And I read them all because, you know, I'm a nerd who likes to read. So if you have any of your favorite required reading books that you want to leave down below, please feel free to do that. Don't forget to give this video a big old thumbs up if you enjoyed it and want to see more videos for Top 5 Wednesday. Also subscribe to my channel down below to be told when I make more videos, and I will see you next time. Bye!